Now, the Three Martini Lunch with Greg Corombos and Jim Geraghty.
And welcome, everyone, to the Thursday edition of the Three Martini Lunch, along with Jim Geraghty of National Review. I'm Greg Corombos of Radio America. We have good, bad, and crazy martinis for conservatives today. And even better yet, we're talking about beer again today. We're sponsored today again by Hopsy. To get the sub-home draft machine, 2 mini kegs of beer, which is equivalent to 2 6-packs, 2 Hopsy glasses, and free membership in the monthly beer club for just $99. Go to tryhopsy.com/martini and use the promo code martini. Terms and conditions apply, and we'll be talking about this again in just a little bit. Jim, let's talk about our good martini. It's a story you and I have talked about numerous times over the years, and it's one that gets precious little attention in the national media, possibly because of the media restrictions in Venezuela, possibly because a lot of people in the media just find it inconvenient to talk about the collapse of Venezuela due to its socialist approach to the economy and life in general. But things are only getting worse. A lot of people are convinced Nicolas Maduro fraudulently won the last election. And as a result, a number of countries are recognizing a different leader who has now put himself in the position of interim president in protest to Maduro, and the U.S. is now aboard that group. Here's MSNBC.
Looking now to the unrest in Venezuela, where today Venezuelan opposition leader Juan Guaido declared himself the country's interim president amid nationwide protests to oust sitting leader Nicolas Maduro. That move comes as President Trump tweeted today that he officially recognized Guaido as the interim president of Venezuela.
And, of course, the media then, Jim, immediately goes in and says, well, is there going to be military intervention? What is this going to mean for our military? It doesn't have to mean that. We had a very effective policy of helping Poland without ever putting a troop on the ground there when the Solidarity movement was going on. So the fact that not only the United States but other countries in Latin America are getting on board with this is hopefully going to put enough pressure on the Maduro regime to finally pack it in.
Yeah, a couple of thoughts to unpack here, Greg. The first being, I think it was some wag on Twitter put it very well yesterday, and he said, there are certain sights you just have to see in your life. The African sunset, the glories of the world's oceans or great redwoods in California, and one of them is the collapse of a communist regime. We've seen it a few times in our lifetimes, and it never gets old, and so we may be on the verge of that. It certainly feels like we are at a tipping point. People looked at the increasingly worsening situation in Venezuela, people literally starving, the complete de facto economic collapse in that country, not driven by the decline in oil countries. You notice you're not seeing the same thing in Saudi Arabia. You're not seeing the same thing in plenty of oil-producing countries all around the world. You're seeing this in Venezuela because of the policies of the government. Now, this may be the tipping point. But then again, we've seen this in Eastern Europe and up against Ceausescu in Romania. We've also seen Tiananmen Square. There are no guarantees from this point, but it does feel like we are reaching an important tipping point in the United States, leading quite a few countries to come along and say, look, Maduro is not the legitimate ruler of this country. We recognize the opposition is a big step. Now, you said that there's not, we probably are, not likely to get into military conflict here, Greg, and I think you're right, but it is worth noting that Maduro has given U.S. diplomatic personnel 72 hours to leave Venezuela, and the U.S. has said, we're not going to do that. Obviously, Maduro's response to this latest uprising is to blame the United States, say it's all a U.S. government plot, et cetera, et cetera. Would Maduro be stupid enough to try to provoke a conflict with the United States by detaining or attempting to harm our personnel some way? I don't know. Depends on how desperate he is. You'd like to think somebody in the hemisphere would be saying, look, you could always take the Ferdinand Marcos path. You can go into exile. You get to keep a chunk of your money. Your family gets to keep a chunk of your money. Imelda Marcos had to give up that cellar full of shoes. It's not going to be great. You don't get to rule the country anymore. But you can leave and live comfortably, although probably with some threat of, assassination some point down the road from all the enemies you've made. You can leave, and we don't have to go this. We can do this the easy way or the hard way. But the message should be getting to Maduro that you're not going. This does not end with you remaining in power of a starving country. That things are coming to a head now. So very dramatic. I think the Trump administration took the right step. I thought it was very interesting what Ala Pundit had written at Hot Air, where he said, "Look, this is not an administration that spends a lot of time focusing on South America, and it has certainly been friendly to certain hardline rulers around the world, most notably Putin and the guy in the Philippines, Duterte, and groups like that. I think it's not a coincidence. This is the most openly, loudly self-professed socialist ruler in the hemisphere, Greg. And my suspicion is that Trump, who may or may not be have a soft spot for certain strongmen, doesn't share this opinion when someone is such an overt socialist. And, oh, by the way, the Democratic Party is beating the drums for socialism quite a bit. Now, if you ask them, I'm sure they say, this is not real socialism. True socialism has never been tried. It's just a coincidence that it always ends up with secret police and gulags and mass starvation.
If you look at the map now, there was a map I saw yesterday of countries in the Western Hemisphere that have joined the U.S. in this recognition of a different leader in Venezuela. We're hardly alone. Colombia, there's others in South America and even some in Latin America. The Mexicans are a notable exception to that, and I believe the Russians, for whatever reason, are standing with Maduro. So
so unlike them to oppose us on the world stage. Almost like they're our biggest geopolitical foe. If only somebody had warned us of that back in 2012. So, yeah, just one other observation there. The other thing is the condition of Venezuela. There are plenty of countries all around the hemisphere who have various beefs with the United States government, who probably don't like the way Trump speaks about immigrants and all kinds of matters like that. But the facts on the ground in Venezuela speak for themselves. You can't say, no, Maduro's doing a great job. Leave him be.
Right.
He's fine. Everything's working out fine. They got, refugees, people trying to flee the country. Look, this is a failed regime, and thus it is time for regime change. Now, how that goes about is still a very open question. But I think it's safe to say the status quo in Venezuela is untenable.
Yeah. When you have to eat your pets, something has gone horrifically wrong in the culture, and that is happening on a rampant scale. Hospitals with no supplies left. I mean, it's just desperate. All right, Jim, let's talk about happier things. Maybe we can one day toast to the ouster of Nicolas Maduro, and hopefully that day will come soon. And you can do it with your Hopsy. That's the good news. This episode of 3 Martini Lunch, of course, is sponsored by Hopsy. And by now, all of you should know that the only way to get beer at its best is straight from the tap. Hopsy brings beer on tap to the comfort of your own home without the price tag that many beer drinkers have come to expect. So have your own beer bar at home with The Sub, a countertop appliance that fits neatly in your kitchen, bar, or living room.
Think of Hopsy as the Nespresso for beer or Keurig for beer. Whether you're a hophead, malt mouth, or a palate partier, you can enjoy a variety of beer styles from big and small breweries, which rotates monthly. The IPAs are very popular. Hopsy partners with a long list of breweries and ships many kegs straight to your home or office. I have one myself. I enjoyed showing it off during the holidays, and listeners to this podcast may recall, I decided to try to give up alcohol for January just to dry myself out from enjoying myself during the holidays. And my Hopsy beer machine is sitting on my kitchen counter calling to me at this very moment, Greg. I can hear it. Can you hear it? Listeners, just, Jim, you want to drink us? And it's sitting there, and I have 4 mini kegs sitting there ready to go, but I'm going to hold out till February, but it's very difficult. I just want to point out, this will be you will want to enjoy it. You will want to share this with friends. This is almost a party in a box. You can't wait to bring people over and say, hey, check this out. And, oh, by the way, it's neat, it's cool, and the beer is a heck of a lot of fun. So trust me, probably the toughest thing about the Hopsy is not using it when you've got kegs ready to go and they call to you.
So, Jim, you'll be all set then for the Super Bowl. And the good news is you can still have a beer just like you're at the stadium, but the person beside you or behind you probably won't dump a beer on your head, either out of anger that you're cheering for the other team or just that they're completely wasted. So that's good.
Depending on your friends, yeah.
So to get the Sub-Home Draft Machine, 2 mini kegs of beer, again, equivalent to 2 6-packs, 2 Hopsy glasses, and free membership in the monthly beer club for $99, go to tryhopsy.com/martini and use the promo code martini. Terms and conditions apply. That's spelled TRYHOPSY.com/martini, promo code martini. Again, tryhopsy.com. All right, Jim, on to the bad martini now. And for that, we go to the Morning Jolt. And one of the things you wrote about today, in fact, you led off with it, is what you call the media's system of incentives in how they portray various stories. And basically, the thesis here is that they know they're going to get a better response the more they whip people up into a rage. And here's a little bit of what you wrote. Why do some journalists put out inaccurate, narrative-advancing versions of events? Because often there's a bigger, or at least more easily reached audience for the inaccurate, narrative-advancing versions of events than the accurate, non-narrative advancing one. Very few liberal readers want to hear that a bunch of kids from a Catholic high school at the March for Life encountered some obnoxious black nationalists and then had an awkward interaction with a Native American activist who walked up to them and beat his drum in a young man's face. And oh, by the way, this guy tried to disrupt Catholic church services the same weekend. Too nuanced. They want simple stories of heroes and villains. Very few people on the right want to hear the president's team is incompetent or he's getting blamed for the shutdown. You know why they call it clickbait? Because people click on it. So, Jim, I think that's spot on. So how did we get here and how do we get out of it?
Sure. I think it was a headline over in the Washington Examiner. It was Beckett Adams or somebody who said basically we're well past the point of urging the news media to do better. Something is fundamentally broken with the news media and how it goes about its duties. And I thought it was an accurate assessment. And I was like, well, let's look at why this is. And it basically comes down to, is there enough of a benefit? Is there enough of an incentive to do the right thing? And I guess the flip side is there enough of a deterrent to do the wrong thing? And, the first thing we talk about deterrence, I jokingly point out, like, look, Dan Rather appears on a CNN program called Reliable Sources. Do you think there is deterrent for getting the story wrong? No, right? One of the guys on the BuzzFeed story reported that Karl Rove was on the verge of getting arrested back in 2006. It didn't happen. He never named all of his sources, suggesting that either his sources were, never the kind of plausible folks, or maybe his sources lied to him. By the way, I think if your sources lie to you, you should expose it. You should lay it out. So there's none of that. But the flip side is, when you and I try to spotlight good journalism here, when institutions and publications we often disagree with do a good job, we try to say so. Yesterday we talked about Joy Behar, far from our favorite person, but she and Whoopi Goldberg had a good, honest, self-aware assessment about the dynamics of political conversations in this country. My understanding, Greg, is that despite the fact that you and I praised them, that neither Joy Behar nor Whoopi Goldberg are walking with an extra spring in their step, beaming with extra pride and extra smile, saying, hey, Jim and Greg thought we did a good job yesterday. In other words, if you do the right thing, do you get the right kind of rewards? Do you get bigger traffic? Some days you do, some days you don't. Ask any journalist. They'll tell you a story about what they think is some of their best work, not getting nearly as much attention because it wasn't sensational enough. The easiest button to press is outrage. You see this. I heard this from my buddy Cam Edwards discussing talk radio. And this is not to say talk radio is bad or wrong. Really good talk radio hosts can stir almost any emotion in their listeners. They can tell a sad story. They can tell a funny story. They can make you feel any one of those things. But every one of, particularly talk, whether it's cable news, whether it's talk radio, whether it's a newspaper column, very often it's based on this kind of emotional connection. We want to know what's going on in the world, but we also generally like stories that tell us something that moves us. It could be something that moves us in a positive way, makes us feel good about the world, heartwarming stories. They rescued the puppy, or remember Greg, wasn't it the 3 whales who were stuck up in the ice up somewhere up north years ago?
Yeah.
Baby Jessica in the well,
sure.
Right? These are sometimes called human interest stories. Sometimes we want the news to make us feel good. Sometimes we want the news to make us feel bad when something doesn't work. Healthcare.gov, for example, or veterans die waiting for care at the Department of Veterans Affairs, VA hospitals. That makes us outraged. It doesn't, outrage isn't always wrong, but outrage is easiest, which makes my suspicion is the people in this business who aren't as good at their jobs, who don't have that full palette of paint, so to speak. They press that button of outrage because it's the easiest. I remember hearing this from another columnist where they said, at this point in history, everything is a crisis. And my sense was if everything is a crisis, then nothing's a crisis. You can't turn up the outrage to 11 every single day. My suspicion is people tune you out. But for a lot of news publications, getting people angry is the simplest and easiest way to ensure you keep their attention. So this is the way people operate in. Different people are going to respond to this different ways. I talked about it in the Jolt. I try to give you your serving of red meat and your vegetables at the same time. I'll try. When I'm angry, you're going to hear about it. And a lot of times I'll put out and I'll dish up the red meat. I think Democrats are stupid. I'm going to tell you Democrats are stupid. And by and large, my readers love that. When I say I think Trump's doing something wrong, I think Trump really botched it. I think Trump, they don't like hearing that nearly as much, but I put it out there because I feel like I've got to say it. And then they get why do we always eat our own, Jim, and all that kind of stuff. But it's the flip side on the right. If you're on the Huffington Post and you write, Nancy Pelosi is really being obstinate about this government shutdown. She really could and should support some border fence funding in order to get the government reopened and in exchange for DACA or something like that. Are people at the Huffington Post audience going to love it? No. They want to hear that Donald Trump is the worst guy ever. And this is where we are. I mean, people react to the incentives they're given. If the audience really wants the news media to change, they have to stop rewarding the bad behavior, and they've got to start rewarding the good behavior. So I'll get off my soapbox at this point, Greg.
Oh, I applaud you heartily. I hope most of our audience is as well. And the difference, of course, Jim, is that when you're fired up in the Jolt or on this podcast or somewhere else, it's because you're legitimately fired up. It's not because you think, I don't really care about this, but the people are going to be really fired up if I whip it up over this story. And so I think there's a big difference there.
And one last anecdote or story that I think illuminates this. Again, I don't want people to walk away saying, the news media is a bunch of phonies and it's a different version of reality television and everyone's playing a role and all that stuff. But I'm just going to observe at least once. I did a cable news show. And in the green room, everybody's really nice. You're sitting there before you're ready to go on. And I was speaking to a Democratic consultant. I believe the topic turned to earmarks. And he said, but I've been telling my clients for a while that they're playing with fire. This was going to backfire on them at some point. It looks wasteful to people. It looks corrupt. Whatever you're getting out of it, it isn't worth the hit to your image or something like that. I was like, this guy seems pretty reasonable. Then we went on air, and that little red camera light went on, and all of a sudden he went out and put a full-throated defense of earmarks, Greg. This wasn't what he thought at all, or at least as of 5 minutes ago. And I just kind of sat there a little bit dumbfounded. Like I know I've gotten in trouble in the past for rolling my eyes at other panelists during cable news appearances. If I ever look staring in disbelief, that confused dog look that Tucker Carlson has perfected so well, it's often because it's a situation where I know someone doesn't really believe what they're saying, but they feel like in order to defend their side or attack the other side or that they have to do this. They can't acknowledge, the other side's got a point here. And at that point, cable news and what's supposed to be edifying and informative and hopefully kind of a spirited back and forth, it turns into rock'em sock'em robots. You're the red robot, you're the blue robot, you guys go fight. And that's where we are. And so now today's podcast has turned into a lot of Jim venting about the industry.
Okay, final question on this because I don't want your blood pressure to go too high. But is the green room considered off the record? I mean, what would happen on CNN or wherever you were if you said, really, that's an interesting take? That's completely the opposite of what you just told me in the green room.
Yeah, I've always considered it that way.
Okay.
But I know I have seen other people pumping other people. I've seen people who are reporters pump other figures for information in what it was. It's casual green room conversation, but this is stuff they're planning on writing later or something like that. Let's just say the ethics there are fuzzy. My attitude is unless I specifically say, hey, can I use this in an article? I'm never going to use it in an article because otherwise, people don't want to talk to you.
All right, let's move on to our final martini, our crazy martini. And Jim, they just keep coming. Democrats trying to run in 2020, you've got the ones everybody expected. We still haven't heard from Joe Biden, but everybody's expecting him to get in. Elizabeth Warren, probably Bernie Sanders, Kamala Harris. Who else has gotten in lately? But lots of other people. Tulsi Gabbard, for example. But then there's the also-rans. You've got John Delaney, the former Maryland congressman, who I still can never remember his name because I just Googled Mulaney, and it still got me there. So
Mulvaney is a hilarious comedian, by the way.
He's also
different guy. Sorry, never mind.
I know. He's also the chief of staff to the president, so it's very confusing. And, of course, now you've got the mayor of South Bend, Indiana, always a stepping stone to the presidency, a guy named Pete Buttigieg, which I can tell you with the last name of Corombos, Buttigieg in and of itself is a major hurdle to getting elected to anything. You want a name like Bush.
You have an issue with write-in votes, Greg.
You want a name like Bush, Clinton, dull. Well, maybe not dull, but, one of those easy days for people to remember. Trump. Anyway, so there's going to be a lot of people, and the Democrats are trying to make as much room as possible for them. And over at Real Clear Politics, they point out that there's actually a plan to have multiple nights of multiple debates. The first two debates for the Democrats in June and July will have 2 rounds, possibly over 2 nights, to accommodate what is expected to be an unwieldy field. Candidates will be assigned at random, Tom Perez said, he's the chairman of the DNC, to avoid the party picking and choosing who is a top-tier contender, as Republicans did during their 2016 primary debate. So, Jim, it's kind of like the pool scene in Caddyshack. Everybody's diving in at once, and it's going to be chaos.
Yeah, and I kind of wonder if at some point the DNC will be forced to reevaluate this policy. You may recall back, 2016 cycle, Republicans had 17 candidates. I think Gilmore was invited to a few of them, right?
At least the first one.
I'm trying to think if there's anybody who didn't get invited to any of them. Most nights they would have 14, 15, 16, depending on when they had the threshold. Not everybody got invited. And of course, there was the 6 p.m. preseason football version. Quite literally not ready for primetime players. It's kind of your spring training, kind of loosen up your muscles, the undercard fight, if you want to call it. And then at 8 o'clock Eastern, you'd get the primetime one. Well, Democrats have decided that's not fair. And we know how much Democrats prioritize fairness. So no, everybody, there is no big kids table and no little kids table. Everybody, we're going to pick them at random. The debate organizers figured out you really couldn't have more than 10 people on stage if you're going to keep it to a minute. I assume we're talking 2-hour debates, and they're not talking, ungodly 3-hour debates. 3 hours of prime time of nonstop Democratic talking points. Yay! This recognition. So you top out at 20 at that point, right? Well, it's possible they'll go beyond that, particularly with Pete Buttigieg with this thing. Now, here's the thing. I had said yesterday, who the heck is this guy, and why on God's green earth do people think that being the mayor of South Bend is the stepping stone to the presidency? I should give Mr. Buttigieg, Pete some credit. He's a graduate of Harvard. He's a Rhodes Scholar, veteran of the war in Afghanistan. Impressive guy. Impressive life story. Oh, by the way, he'd be the first openly gay presidential candidate, or you could say major party, although I believe Fred Karger ran for the Republicans back in 2012. If you're saying who, yeah, you've got a lot of company there, but technically he's not. But so he basically, look, Democrats have this wonderful notion of we're going to let anybody who wants to run show up and join us at the debate. And if you're the mayor, Pete, you're in a circumstance where, look, nobody thinks you're going to become president of the United States and taking the oath of office in 2021. But, he's 37 years old. He could very easily run 4 years from now or 8 years from now or even 12 or 16 years from now. You run, you probably get a fancy book deal. You raise your name ID. You get to be on TV a lot. South Bend's going to have a crisis while he's gone? There's no downside. It's all upside. And maybe you build some support for running for governor, running for senator, or running for president someday down the road. The problem is everybody else has the exact same philosophy. And at some point it turns into a tragedy of the commons. There's just too much benefit. Now, what I'm hoping, Greg, is that once you reach some sort of critical mass, then the amount of attention that a Mayor Pete would get, or even a Julian Castro is going to get, won't be enough to make it worthwhile. But keep in mind that we should not underestimate the sheer ironclad, indestructible adamantium alloy of denial that some politicians are capable of. I believe it was in New Hampshire. I went up there during the 2016 cycle. I'm repeating an anecdote from my friend and colleague, Charlie Cook. You may recall that Jim Gilmore, who was a perfectly fine governor of Virginia, but most people have forgotten about him, that in Iowa he got 11. I don't mean 11%. I don't mean he won 11 precincts. I mean he won 11 votes. Now, for perspective, Greg, that's only 11 more than you and I got, and we didn't run. And so here he is, and he's doing this. So he's doing an interview in New Hampshire, and most people, having gotten 11 out of a couple million, I want to say, or a couple 100,000 votes in Iowa, would say, all right, that's it. Clearly, I'm going nowhere. This is embarrassing. I'm doing it. And Jim Gilmore was doing interviews and he was saying, I am absolutely certain that I'm going to win the New Hampshire Republican primary. Now, in the polls, he was somewhere between 0 and 1. There was he was just like, and Charlie was telling me, he's like, he really needs help. This is not the reaction of a sane person. So I think this is spreading in our politics. And I think that, a lot of people say, it's unfair. You're not allowing long shot candidates to have their chance. Look, you know what? You want to run for president? This isn't, this is not an entry level position. Show me you've done something. Show me you've won a race statewide before you start thinking you can be the next commander in chief. And of course, everyone looks at the current president and says, see, if he can do it, why can't I? But anyway, I think, for at least for the next cycle, Greg, it's going to be the Democrats' problem. It's going to be absolutely fascinating to watch them trying to figure out how to have a debate when more than 20 people show up.
Oh, this is going to be so much fun. Having them eat their own, unless they do have a 3-hour debate, because even 3 hours of Republican debates, CNN had one of those. I think it was the one at the Reagan Library. Even then, my eyes were rolling into the back of my head. So,
Star Wars only needs like 2 hours for a movie. After a while, this thing starts to stretch on longer than a Robert Caro nonfiction book adapted by Peter Jackson. I'm kidding. There's not enough time in the universe for that for that film to be made.
That would be tough. But yeah, 3 hours of no, I hate Trump more is going to be a little bit tedious. Yes, no, I love
Orange Man bad.
I love the environment more. Get ready, everyone. Jim, we'll do it again. Actually, we're not going to do it again tomorrow. You're off to rub elbows with the evil Koch brothers for a couple of days. So
I am. I picked a wonderful time of year to get away to Palm Springs, California, where they're holding their winter meeting. Usually you get some politicians to show up. The Koch Seminar Network lays out their priorities for the year. Last year, their big push was criminal justice reform, and it turned into law by the end of the year. So always worth checking out. My only request for all the listeners out there, if you happen to work for the Transportation Security Administration, please show up to work tomorrow.
Jim wants to
bad
make
day
his
to
flight.
call in sick. Just saying.
Jim, safe travels. Enjoy the conference, and we'll talk to you, I believe, on Wednesday.
Yep. See you Wednesday, Greg.
Jim Geraghty of National Review. I'm Greg Corombos of Radio America. Thanks for being with us today. Keep in mind there will be 3 martini lunches. David French will be here tomorrow, and then Alexander DeSanctis Monday and Tuesday of next week. And in the meantime, go visit our friends over at Hopsy. Try Hopsy.com/martini and use the promo code Martini. And tune in Friday for the next 3 martini lunch.